Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Matthew Hardman and this is the G Shock Watcher. Today, we are going ahead and doing another retrospective. We've done the Rangeman, we've done the Mudmaster, but the other side of the Mudmaster coin, I guess, is the Mudman itself. And I wanted to spend some time today to talk about the Mudman. And this is the Mudman retrospective. You know, I've been a big fan of G Shock watches, obviously, because I have a channel on it, but I do love my Mudman watch, right? This is a glorious watch. I can't sort of show it in the right way without twisting off my arm, but this Mudman I just think is a really, really solid watch. It's robust, it's solid, it's extremely legible, and owning a Mudmaster and a Mudman, I love my Mudmaster, but I really quite often keep coming back to the Mudman. I love the colors of it. I love the design. I love how easy it is to go ahead and actually read. And I thought I'd love to go ahead and spend some time to talk through what it is that a Mudman delivers, because there are some things in it that really makes Mudman a little bit more unique to, say, what a Mudmaster actually is. So let's dive in and have a look at what's actually there. So if we go and look, the Mudman itself, and this is the current version of the Mudman, and we will go through all of the different types of Mudmans that actually have come out over the year. There's actually one which isn't in here, which people will say is the precursor, but I'm going to go with the official information that's been provided through Shockbase in terms of what they say is the Mudman. But this is the most common current model Mudman today, the GW 9500. It was released in July 2023 at around about $380 US. And this is basically the same sort of model as the Mudman that I'm actually wearing here today. So 81 grams, 56.7 height, 52.7 width, and 14.8 millimeter thickness. It's not a terribly thick watch. I mean, it's a little bit bigger than many other watches, but it's not super thick. It's not, say, Mudmaster thick, and we'll have a look at that sort of comparison a little bit later on. From a resistance point of view, of course, mud, water, carbon core guard, and if you remember, people ask, well, if you're water resistant, surely you're mud resistant. Mud resistance is basically in there to prevent dirt and particles getting into some of the actual buttons on the watch, because if the buttons have dirt inside of them, they may prevent the function of them actually working. And so that's really what the mud resistance is all about, and we talked about that in the Mudmaster video. But in addition to that, we've got carbon core guard, and then sensor arrays, altimeter, barometer, compass, and thermometer, information, sunrise and sunset, timing, so world time, 48 cities, 31 time zones, 5 alarms, backlight, multiband 6, solar, and it also has this dual layer LCD, which is interesting because there's not really too many watches that actually have that in the G Shock range. In fact, I think it might be the only one. The only other watch which utilizes this is actually Casio's ProTrek line. I'll show you how that feature actually works. So I think it's quite innovative from that angle. So if you look at the capabilities of this watch, we are talking about a very, very capable watch. It's been designed for people who work in extreme environments, which the Rangeman for people who work in extreme environments, the Mudmaster for people who work in extreme environments, and same sort of thing here again. Look, the reality is G Shock watches are very much built, especially these bigger ones, are built for people who work in extreme environments. That's why they're built that way. That's why they're called G Shocks. That's the heritage. And so the Mudman is another representation of what that watch actually is. Now, of course, many people will make the obvious draw and comparison between the Mudman and the Mudmaster. So these two watches came out about the same year, 2023. July was the Mudman, October was the Mudmaster. But you can start to see the differentials here, right? The price of a Mudman was $380. The price of a Mudmaster was $800. So you're looking at a fairly sizable change in terms of pricing. But again, with that price change, you're getting a lot more architecture built into the actual watch because of the way the watch actually works. Now, when you look at these two things side by side, what you'll find, Mudman is an all digital watch. it's kind of evolved over time, but it's always been sort of a digital watch. The Mudmaster, where it is today, is a analog and digital watch combined. So what that tells you straight away is there's going to be a lot more moving parts in the Mudmaster. Hence the need for additional protection, because you're looking at things like vibration and all those different things. So when you look at those that resistance, I'll come back to the stats and the size. The Mudman, because it's all digital, has just mud, water, carbon core guard. It's just a solid watch. The Mudmaster, alpha gel, vibration resistance, MVT, low temperature, diamond light coating. You know, there's a lot more resistance. And sure, you could say, well, the Mudman could have diamond light coating. It could have low temperature resistance as well. It doesn't. That's what differentiates the product today. The Mudman, rock solid watch, good capabilities for resistance. But if you wanted the most extreme sort of form of resistance, that's going to be inside the Mudmaster itself. Now, looking at the statistics of it, you can see the real difference in terms of the watches, right? So the Mudman's 81 grams versus the Mudmaster 114 grams. The size of the watch, the height, the width is actually, funny enough, the width is a little bit thinner than the Mudman itself. The thickness, obviously a bit bigger. So the Mudmaster is taller and thicker than the actual Mudman itself. But again, we've got different types of watches. One is a pure LCD watch. The other one has hands and seconds and moving parts. And so that's probably why you sort of see that size there. After that, pretty much all the capabilities are the same. Triple sensor, sunrise, sunset, time zones. The Mudmaster has a few more time zones in it. And then the functions are pretty much the same. And then the Mudman has a dual layer LCD. What I think is kind of funny is the fact that it has 5 alarms. This is obviously a watch designed for my wife, who has an alarm to wake up, and then a second alarm to wake up a second time, and a third alarm to wake up a third time, to really say, you've got to get out of bed now. So someone's pretty extreme on this one. I know there's probably real reasons for it, but I think it's funny to go ahead and actually see. Now, before we go in and have a look at the prices and the release schedule of these watches, let me show you these watches side by side. I want to show you the Mudman, and I want to show you compared to the Mudmaster. So this is the Mudman. This is my special edition one, the Love the Sea and Earth. And as you can see, very robust. I love the coloring on this particular one. This one has all digital display, which is now the common approach. So we've got time here, so time in the middle, date up top, seconds down the bottom. If we go through here, we've got the sunrise and sunset information. So sunrise at 6:59, sunset at 7:08. We go here, this is receiving, so we're not really getting any world time here. Stopwatch, we've got a timer, we've got the alarm, and we've got world time, which is currently set to London. So lots of very easy accessible features from here. Adjust button is up here, and up here we've got access to the compass, the barometer, and the altimeter down the bottom. And of course we also have a light, which you click on and it comes up from that angle there. So nice watch. I particularly like this one. I like the color of it. You can sort of see the Love the Sea and Earth. A bit tougher to see, but the inscription on the actual back of it. So all digital, and compared to this one, this is our Mudmaster. So Mudman, Mudmaster, and this one is a combination analog digital watch, which has the same sort of sensor array, right? So we've got here up the top, this is the display, this is the mode, we've got the light, which lights up there, we've got compass, we've got altimeter. This has on here though the crown, which you can rotate, which is obviously to help you adjust the analog features, and you don't need that on this one because this is an all digital. So less moving parts, very, very legible display. I love the positive display. This is a great looking watch. It's very sturdy, very robust, but both of them mud resistant. Both of them looks very, very good and solid on your arm as well. Now you have a sense of the comparison of the Mudman and the Mudmaster. What I want to do is take you through kind of like a timeline of the releases of the Mudman watches, what their prices were like, and their feature sets as they started to introduce them. So I'm going to switch over here to this slide, which is the timeline of prices themselves. And I've based this on trying to take older prices and convert them to today's exchange rate. So we've got the years down the bottom, the price on the left-hand side. So starting off, we have this particular watch, which is the DW8400. And this particular watch itself was the founding platform for what the Mudman is going to start to look like. This is where we start to see it take shape. Now, it didn't really have all of the capabilities that you would actually think about a Mudman today. I mean, there was nothing like this particular watch. In fact, even looking at it in terms of resistance, it was fairly fundamental, fairly basic. It had water resistance and an alarm. And that was basically it. But we are talking about a watch that came out back in 1995. Now, I'm not too sure, in comparison to other watches that were released from G Shock, did they have more capabilities and more features? It might be something to have a look at. But at this point, the Mudman was really a very, very basic watch at this point, with just water resistance and one alarm. But as we start to move forward, we get the introduction of this watch. Now, this particular watch is interesting. It's unique because if you take a look at it, it doesn't fit the Mudman mold, which is what we were talking about before when we did the comparison between the Mudmaster and the Mudman. The Mudmaster has analog mixed with digital. The Mudman is typically all digital, except this watch wasn't. This was the AW570, and it came out in 1997 for $147. It added magnetic resistance and 2 more alarms. But it is labeled as a Mudman. Now, it's hard to sort of see, but at the very bottom of the band itself, it actually does have Mudman listed on the watch. And so what's interesting, if you were to think about this, should this have been called a Mudmaster? But again, I don't know when the Mudmasters came back out. I'd have to go back and look at the video again, because the Mudmaster was the fusion of analog and digital. And this has more of the stylings of a Mudmaster versus a Mudman, but it was called a Mudman. So that was in 1997, $147. So moving on from this particular watch, we actually take a long break. We don't get another watch in the Mudman releases until 2006. And so it makes you kind of wonder, was it a watch series that wasn't popular? And so Casio decided, let's not keep investing in that particular line, because if it was popular, you would tend to see watches coming out every sort of year or every 2 years. But a 6-year break, 9 years. A 9-year break is fairly substantial in terms of the watches. But they came back, and I think they started to come back strong, because what we start to see here is this G9000, and this is where we see the introduction of Mudman features, right? So mud resistance, we've got multiple time zones, we've got a multi-stopwatch, we've got 5 alarms, we've got auto backlight. So you start to see more advanced capabilities coming into the watch itself for people to actually use. Now, in the same year, there was a second watch that was introduced. And this one is the GW9000. And this is important. When you look at the models, the W indicator adds a certain capability. And what that capability is multiband. So we start to see multiband being introduced into the actual watch itself. So for $169, we have a little bit of a different design, but multiband 5 is added into the watch. So we get 2 Mudman releases in the same time frame. After that, we get a little break, and we start going into 2008, and what we see now is the introduction of the G9010. And this is important. It adds tough solar, because this is where we start getting into what we know today in terms of these tough solar watches. So the G9010, priced at $120, introduced tough solar into the Mudman platform. So now we start getting into that really tough watch, right? It's starting to get those capabilities. It's starting to be able to actually have tough solar, so it runs fairly independently. After that comes out, well, no surprises, we get the GW9010. So instead of multiband 5, we now get multiband 6 into the Mudman watch itself. So now we really are getting closer to that platform that we know today. Multiband 6, tough solar, mud resistance. This is really where we start to see the Mudman take shape in terms of its platform. So after this, we get a break from 2008 to 2011. And we see the introduction of not one, not two, but four watches in that particular year. And you start to see the prices jump up a little bit more. So we've gone from, at the low end, 120 to 200 and 220, at the higher end, 245 to 270. So what is it that actually drives the difference? I'm going to start here at this particular watch. This is the G9300. I call it a V1, price at $220, but we've got now dual sensors being introduced, right? So we've got the compass, we've got the thermometer, we've got a moon graph, time zones, but no multiband. Okay, so this is a watch which we're going to come back to and talk a little bit more about, because I think there's some interesting things about this particular Mudman. But if you look at it, we've got this particular watch, the 9300, and then this one is also a 9300, but it has a different module. And the reason it has a different module is because this one is the negative display variant. So it's got a negative display, and then this one has a positive display. So these two watches priced around $200 have that view. Both the same sets of features, both of them just a little bit different in terms of price. Now, of course, if I go up to these ones at the higher end, you can pretty much guess these are GWs. So what do they have? They have multiband 6. So they're the same as the watches below, but now they have the multiband capability. And the price of the negative display was $245. Positive display was $270. So interesting to try and work out what is it that actually means the price difference has to be different for negative display versus positive display. It's an interesting point, maybe something we need to try and actually understand, because I would assume they'd have all the same sort of materials, but there is a price differentiation. One side is $25, the other side is $20. But this is the time where we start to see the real foundation of the Mudmans as we know it. And this design of this particular watch, you start to permeate through other watches as well. And as I said, we'll come back to it. From here, in 2011, we actually wait a fairly substantial amount of time again. And we go from 2011 to 2023. So now we're talking about 12 years difference. Now, I could be wrong, but they couldn't find any Mudmans that were actually released between those years, from 2011 to 2023. That's a 12-year gap. And what we finally get from that 12-year gap is the Mudman we know today, the GW9500. There's no variance on this one without multiband 6. It's now pretty much a standard, priced at $350. So we've also got a fairly big price jump. But what we are getting is really a very big screen, very legible display. We've got the introduction of that dual layer LCD, carbon core guard, triple sensor, sunrise, sunset, tough solar, multiband 6. This is the culmination of all the work and the research that Casio has done with G Shock to be able to produce the Mudman at this point. And so, you know, 300, I got 350 and 380. I've got my prices a little bit confused, but it's the pinnacle of the watches at this point, right? So this is really what we like to see with the Mudman. It's what I love about this particular watch here as well. So moving on from there, special editions. And of course, it wouldn't be a G Shock if there weren't collaborations and special editions and all those different things. And there was quite a few of them, right? There were a lot of car special editions for Honda and Nissan and things like that. There was Coleman, which, if you sort of look at it, they make kind of coolers and eskies and all those different things, but there was a Mudman for Coleman. There's 21st Century Boys, there's 25th anniversary watch, 30th anniversary watch. And these ones down here, Team Land Cruiser. I'm going to come back and talk about the car part, because there's an interesting feature in the Mudman, which is linked to sort of cars and racings and things like that. But then we also have the Love the Sea and Earth. And obviously this collaboration came through later on and is the watch that I'm wearing here today. This is the Love the Sea and Earth Mudman. But talking about all of these different special editions, there's some really great ones. I mean, some of these 30th anniversary ones, they look really, really nice. The reds, the golds, all those different colors. The Coleman and the 21st Century Boy, I could love and leave it. But some very, very interesting special edition watches which people can go ahead and actually pick up and enjoy. Now, it wouldn't be a G-Shock if we didn't talk about the various characters that are actually associated when they actually start to look at some of these G-Shock watches. And what's interesting is that some of these actual symbols actually relate to features and capabilities of the particular Mudman watches. And so we see at the left-hand side here, mud-resistant structure, right? That's the little mole we have there working on the drill. We've got the anti-magnetic structure, which is what we see on the mole there holding a lightning bolt. And what you might hear them call this is there's a Mudman, but there's also a Gauzeman. And the Gauzeman is the anti-magnetic one, but typically gets counted in as a Mudman. We also have the radio-controlled solar, so multiband 6, and then we have a rally specification. I'm going to come back to this one in a sec because this is a big part of what the Mudman's all about. And then this is the back of the Mudman today, the new evolution Mudman. So it's a little bit more high-tech. He's got the high-tech cool glasses, carbon core guard on his chest. This is really the current pinnacle. There were some other logos that were created as well, but I'm guessing that this shock-resistant Mudman is very similar to the mud-resistant one, or maybe the shock-resistant was the initial G-Shocks. Mud-resistant came in a little bit later, as we sort of saw. And there's also this Mudman logo. Couldn't get a good high-definition version of it, but it almost looks like he might be a radio-controlled as well. But that seemed to be indicated by G-Shock that this was the Mudman logo. So it's always interesting seeing some of the characters that are actually utilized and what they actually represent. They do mean something in a lot of these different things. Like if you look at the Frogmans, for example, there are different Frogman icons which are utilized to explain different features on the watch itself. And maybe in a future video, we'll just look at all of the different the different G-Shock logos and look at what they actually are. So those are the logos. Now, this is the interesting part. I talked about the car part, the racing, and what it is that makes Mudman unique. Because somebody said, Matt, why do a Mudman video? It's not that much different to a Mudmaster, except this. This is a very specific feature for the actual Mudmans, which is their rally specification, which was part of what we saw back here, right? This little mole with the rally specification. What is the rally specification? Well, the rally specification relates to features which are built for extreme car racing. And they're talking about car rallies. So you've got to think about the Dakar rally, racing out in the desert, sand dunes, mud, like just really, really extreme conditions. We're not talking about a track. We're talking about going off-road. And you see these really heavy-duty vehicles which are utilized to race across really, really extreme environments. And that's what this rally specification is all about. The mud resistance is obviously a key part of this, but it also has features to track things like special stage elapsed time, tracking of goal time. So saying this is the time I want to be at. I've got to make sure I get there before it goes off. Alerts for remaining time. A lot of different things are built into this particular watch to make it have the rally specification. Now, it's not in all the Mudmans. It's certainly not in this Mudman. There's actually a specific rally function in the actual watch, but it only came up in a few of the watches itself. In fact, I think it was really only 2 modules that actually had this particular feature and capability. What I find interesting, going back to some of the things we've actually seen in some of these slides, if I come back here and talk about the Team Land Cruiser, some of these racing ones, what's interesting to me is actually none of these watches actually have this feature. So if I go into, for example, the Team Land Cruiser Toyota editions, there's 5 watches in that series, which are kind of related around heavy duty rally and things like that. Yet none of these watches actually have the rally specification or the rally features, which is in the earlier Mudman. So it's interesting that some of these things have been dropped off, and I'm not sure how hard it would be for an all-digital watch to incorporate the rally feature. It already has 5 alarms and multiple countdowns and all those different things. Maybe they just don't need the rally specification feature anymore because it's kind of built in from a timer point of view. Didn't need to make it more complicated. But I don't know. It feels like a missed opportunity. If you're going to do a special edition Toyota Land Cruiser team for the rally in the Mudman, maybe add the feature and call it something else. I'm not too sure, but it's missing that particular feature in the actual watch itself. So that's kind of interesting from that point of view. This is the other one, which is a very, very unique feature and something which I just think is very, very cool from a tech point of view. The Duplex LCD in the actual Mudman itself. Let me show you how this actually works with the overhead camera and see what you think. Okay, so looking at the watch, there's two areas I see the dual LCD being employed. There might be more, I just haven't found them yet. But there's the compass and there's the barometer. The compass is the most obvious one. So if I click compass, what you'll actually see here is the compass itself being superimposed on top of the actual digital display. So the purple compass is actually on top on that dual layer LCD. And the one down the bottom here, the three large lines, that's my north. And then obviously south and east and west on the other side. So if I sort of move, you can sort of see that actually moving on top. So I guess it gives you a digital and also a, well, both are digital, but it gives you a visual indicator as well as the actual numbers as well. Now, if we go back and jump into barometer, what it will show me is the current barometer. It shows me a graph at the top, a graph at the top, which is sort of historical. And the dual layer LCD is showing me indicator that it is starting to sort of go down only in the sort of slightest amount of way. So those are the two things I can actually see the dual LCD being used for. Now the reality is I'm not sure I'm going to use those features every single day, but I do think they are very, very cool to be able to have these two layers of LCD sitting on top of each other. Just adds that coolness, extreme technology to the actual watch itself. So I'm a big fan. Finally, this is one of the last things I wanted to talk about was the comparison of watches. I talked about this before when I thought about the G9300 and the look of that particular watch. And if you look at a watch that looks very, very similar, it's going to be this one, the GW9400. So the numbers themselves are very, very close. We've got on one side the GW9300, the Mudman, and on the right-hand side we've got the GW9400, which is the Rangeman. These watches take very similar design cues. You can see the compass on the top left. You can actually see the date on the top right of the actual watch. The arrays look very, very similar in terms of what they actually have. The Rangeman has the light down the bottom. The Mudman has the light up the top right. But, you know, if you look at the comparisons, right? Weight, the Rangeman's a little heavier, a little bit bigger than the Mudman. Same sort of height, same sort of thickness in terms of the watch itself. But, you know, not too dissimilar. They both have the same resistance. The Rangeman has more sensor capabilities than the Mudman itself. The information, the Mudman has a moon graph, and you can sort of see that below the compass on the bottom left-hand side of the compass down there is a moon graph. Rangeman has sunrise, sunset. But even after that, multiband 6, tough solar. The watches themselves are very, very similar. And this is where I guess it gets interesting. I wonder if G Shock took stock of this and started to say, well, do we need to start to look at different types of features and capabilities? Because as somebody who owns multiple Rangemans, I love the first edition Rangemans, these GW9400. But since then, they've sort of gone off on a very different journey in terms of what the Rangeman starts to look like. And in fact, even if you thought about it, the Mudmans have gone off on a different journey. Like after that 11-year break, what they came back with was a very different watch. It's that full LCD display. The Rangeman has almost gone full LCD. In fact, it's gone now to MIP displays in the latest edition watches as well. So we sort of see this divergence, and we've almost lost what that iconic sort of view actually looks like. I mean, these two watches look very, very similar in terms of the way they position their complications and things like that. So when you look at it, the Mudman and the Rangeman in that time frame in the 2010, so 2011, 2013, were very, very similar in design, very similar in functionality. Rangeman obviously had a little bit more to it than the Mudman actually had, but still both very compelling watches. Both will look very, very good on anyone's arm. So I thought that was an interesting comparison. We talk about the Mudman and the Mudmaster, but the Mudman from 2011 compared to the Rangeman from 2013, very, very comparable watches. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was interesting. This was the Mudman Retrospective. It is a very, very cool watch. Like I say, it's approachable from a price point of view. Functionality is very, very cool. It's a very robust watch, and certainly one that should be in your collection from a G Shock collecting point of view, I would say. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, share. I've really enjoyed sharing this information with you and doing all of the research around this. The Mudman is a cool watch, and I hope you get a chance to grab a hold of one. Thank you very much and have a great day.